Alright, hello guys. Where we left off last time was chapter 1. It's only got 14 pages, so I was thinking of maybe reading like the first 3 chapters and going from there, because let's see, how many chapters are there? I'm also reading this on my Kobo, because I like the Kobo. That was weird. That was weirdly said. I like my Kobo because I find it really hard to like read normal books. Like I have Elton John's autobiography here. I read the first 3 pages and then got bored because normal books like that bore me, but this one's actually fun. There are 33 chapters in the book. They should have made it 32 like in the original Doom. Heyo! Right, so where we last left off, Flynn punched Lieutenant Weems right in the jaw and was sent to Phobos to, like, basically be isolated. I've kind of read ahead. I made it to chapter 3 and then realized that I had to record a video about this today, so I kind of know what goes on. Chapter 1. I didn't miss Earth, but I sure as hell hated Mars. Sitting in a dingy mess hall on Phobos, one of the 2 tiny Martian moons, seemed like a nice compromise. Ordinarily, the CO, Major Boyd, would have handed me over to the Jaggies for trial. But the day after Weems gave me that fateful order that brought him a youthful fist from yours truly, the 15th received order to answer a distress call from Phobos. Fox Company was due to rotate back to the world anyway. Boyd decided to mail us to Mars. They poured me into the transport along with the rest of Fox. Plenty of time to fry my butt after we figured out what the hell the UAC miners were squawking about this time. The corpse. The corpse. All glory to the corpse. I don't think you know what the Marine Corps truly means to me. It has a bit to do with my father. No, he was not a Marine. God, no. Maybe it has something to do with growing up in Orlando, Florida, and Los Angeles. Seeing the first ersatz Hollywood Boulevard of Universal Studios East, and the even phonier real thing out west. Glitter and tinsel. But was it real? Everything in my life rang as hollow as the boulevard until I found my core in the corpse. Honor wasn't just something you did to credit cards. A lie wasn't called spin control, and spin was something you only do. Blah! And spin was something you only put on a cue ball. Yeah, right. You think you know more about the corpse than I? I know it was all BS. Even in the corpse. I know the service was riddled up and down with lying sacks of dung. Like everything else. There is no cause so noble it will not attract fugheads. FUGG is what it says. I'm not even kidding about that. I didn't swear, I promise you. It literally says FUGG. One of those sci-fi writers Arlene is always shoving at me. David Niven or something? But god damn it, at least we say the word honor without laughing at it. At least we have a code. Sorry. I lost my place there. I will not lie, cheat, or steal, nor tolerate those among us who do. Even if individuals don't always stand up to it, at least it's there to reach for, even if our grasp falls short. At least decency has a legal definition, right here in the Universal Code of Military Justice. At least respect means more than leaving the other guy's graffiti alone. At least we do more crap by 6 a.m. than most of you civilians do all day. At least the corpse is the corpse. Semper Fidelis. Damn it, we know who we are and why we are. Do you? Arlene never saw it the way I did. Hell, no one did. I was a majority of one. But you can't understand me unless you understand this much. There is a place in the world where decent men walk the streets, where water flows uphill, where miracles happen behind enemy lines and without air support, and where a guy, boy or girl, will stand on the wall that divides you people from the barbarians at the gate, take a bullet and shoot back at the son of a gun what fired it. Unless you've been there, you'll never know it. I want to take you there. It's kind of weird. The long trip to Mars was dull, and the little voice in the back of my head had plenty of time to ask whether I would do anything different if given the chance. I had to honestly answer no. Funny thing is, I'd always hoped I'd go to space one day, but not like this. My idea was to be on a deep space exploratory ship, pushing out beyond the bounds of the known solar system. But when I only scored a 60 on the MilSpace app test, the chances of me receiving a deep space assignment ranged somewhere between infinitesimal and forget it. The big surprise was that one right uppercut to the concrete jaw of Lieutenant Weems opened my pathway to the stars. Not only would I do it over again, I'd still enjoy it. I stared at the two men whose job it was to guard me, and had a strange feeling of unreality. You want some coffee? One of them asked me with something that sounded like actual concern. His thin face reminded me of one of the monks. Yeah, I said. Black, if you don't mind. He smiled. We ran out of cream back in Kafiristan. I figured it out, by the way. It's Kafiristan. And when he hopped up to Phobos, the situation was no improvement. The guard's name was Ron. The other guard's name was Ron, too. I called him Ron, too. Like TWO. But they didn't see the humor in it. We didn't talk much. It seemed a little insulting only having two Marines protecting such a dangerous type as yours truly. But the other men were busy figuring out what had gone wrong on Phobos. After we shipped up to Mars base, we sat for a solid day trying to find why the UAC miners on Phobos had sent a distress call, and why they didn't answer now. In the Marines, you spent an entirety so bored you look forward to your own court-martial as a break in tedium. I don't know. Then an unexpected danger with huge jagged edges comes rolling over all the set routines, a reminder that the universe is a dangerous place. The last message we received from Phobos was, "Things coming through the gate." When something that serious hits the fan, boredom is returned to its proper place as a luxury. That's a tongue twister. The court-martial of a corporal was deemed less important than a potential threat to Mars, and not important at all compared to the immediate threat to the profits of the Union Aerospace Corporation. With a ringing cry of, "Sounds like there's smoke in..." Oh wait, no, that's Lieutenant Weems. No, who's saying that? I don't know. With a ringing cry of, "Sounds like they're smoking something up there," Lieutenant Weems boldly led his men into the transport. At first I thought I'd be left behind on Mars base, but either Weems thought I might prove useful to have along, or he just didn't want a loose end. I volunteered to go along. Sometimes I'm not very bright. Major Boyd did his best to brief us by video feed, under the obvious handicap of complete ignorance. He made the best of it. We were issued pressure suits, in case we had to leave the immediate vicinity of the gate. You couldn't stay very long outside the pressure zone, and you'd get mighty cold, mighty fast. But at least the suits gave you a fighting chance to get to a ship, or a zone before you were stuck in vacuum. I've read that 3 times and I still don't know what that means. I was pleased to be issued in a suit. I was less pleased that Weems didn't issue me a weapon. While I contemplated the lethal uses of common household articles, PFC Ron 2 brought the promised cup of coffee. It tasted bad enough to be a strategic weapon of deterrence. The expression on the guard suggested that he might have sampled it before passing it on to me, but maybe he was just plain scared of the situation. I couldn't really blame him. A word about these gates on Phobos and Deimos. The 2 tiny moons of Mars. You probably heard about the gates, even though it's officially a secret. They were here when we first landed on Mars. It was a hell of a shock discovering that someone, or something, had beaten us. Oh, I just noticed a crack in my case. That's weird. Something had beaten us by 1,000,000 years. To our own closest neighbor. It was long before I joined up, of course, but I can only imagine the panic at the Pentagon when we found ancient and wholly artificial structures on Phobos, despite the complete lack of any form of life on Mars. It was pretty clear they'd been placed there by some alien intelligence. But what? All my adult life I'd heard speculations, the usual UFO culprits. Reticulans, men in black, ancient Martians. That was the most popular theory. Despite not working at all, there were no native life forms on Mars. But try to tell that to the generations raised on Martian walkabout. Rat gash of life, rat gash of Mars, and Mars arise. What? Me? I figured out it was the race of alien anthropologists. They got here, said, not quite ready yet, and left a helipad in case they decided to return, which they might do tomorrow or 100,000 years from now. Somebody decided to call them gates, even though they just sat there doing nothing for as long as we've known about them. But surrounding them was a zone of about half Earth normal gravitation, on a moon whose normal gravity is just this side of zero. In addition to the big inert gates, there were also small pads scattered here and there that instantly transported a person from point A to point B within the area, evidently without harm. Teleports, if you will. I heard about them, but I never seen one. Damned if you'd ever get me into one either. When the United Aerospace Corporation bribed enough congressmen for the exclusive contract to mine Phobos and Deimos, they built their facilities around the gates, taking advantage of the artificial gravity, except for those parts of the operation that wanted low gravity, which they built outside the pressure zones. After the big reorganization, the Corps got the task of guarding the gates. Well, it looked as though the gates weren't quite so inert as we thought. Once we landed on Phobos, the gunny dropped me and my 2 guards at the abandoned air base depot in the western pressure zone, anti-spinwards, and took the rest of Fox Company onto the UAC facilities, Weems in tow. To re-establish contact and secure the situation, all my friends went with Weems, leaving me with the 2 Rons for company. I'm having a hard time reading things today. The Phobos facility is like a gigantic underground cone extending many hundreds of meters into rock. There are a bunch of levels. I'm not even sure how many. 8? 9? The whole thing is built in the center of the solar system's largest strip mine, which would be terrible for the Phobo ecology, except that Phobos doesn't have any ecology. Of course, it's an airless moon of ice and rock. The facility was on the opposite hemisphere from the base. Big deal. The entire moon is only about 25 kilometers in diameter. You can walk from one pole to the other, except most of it is disturbingly close to 0G outside the pressure zones. We had to radio on in the mess hall, and were periodically picking up messages from Weems weasels. We'd about given up hope of hearing anything from the UAC guys who used to be on Phobos. As I slipped the scalding wake-up call, wondering who I could sue if I burnt my tongue, I couldn't help but scrutinize the 2 Rons. Neither gave the impression of being on top of the situation. They kept glancing at the closed cafeteria doors, at the radio, at each other. They weren't paying much attention to their prisoner. They were also having the same conversation every 20 minutes or so. It generally started like this. What do you think's happening? One would ask the others. I was tired of listening to variations on I don't know and I volunteered a theory. Somehow the gates turned on and whoever built them decided UAC was trespassing. Maybe they were wiped out. But who attacked us? Asked Ron 1. Funny. I never thought of Union Aerospace as part of us. They said monsters were coming through the gate, said Ron 2, with the same sense of surprise he displayed over a half a dozen times. Why am I having such a hard time reading today? They said things, I corrected. Neither heard me. Things are monsters. I had faith in Arlene and the rest of the guys. The guards didn't strike me as being overtly interested in the subject of high-order physics. They had reached the firm conclusion in the realm of biological sciences, however. They didn't believe in monsters. The truth is that neither did I. In one respect, I was as bad as the PFCs. They were questions that couldn't be answered yet, but they would stay out of mind. Who was the enemy? How had they reached Phobos through the gates anyways? And most troubling of all, why hadn't Fox found any bodies yet? Major Boyd and even Colonel Brinkle back on Earth would want answers to these questions and a lot more. Suddenly, the radio sputtered to life, grabbing our attention. An invisible hand reaching out to choke the breath from us. It was PFC Grayson out front on recon, reporting to Weems, who was elsewhere in the facility. The young Marine had found a corpse. Weems radioed back the obvious instructions. "ID impossible, sir," reported Grayson, his voice tense. "It's in too many pieces. I can positively say that it was a white male. It looks like... Jesus, sir, it looks like claw marks. And the body's been chewed. Wild beasts on airless Phobos?" Judging by the sickened expressions from Ron and Ron, it was all too evident that neither of these specimens had ever seen combat. I've seen my share, and all at once. The idea of living long enough to attend my own court-martial seemed very appealing. Even 5 years at Leavenworth looked good. The fact that I didn't have a gun crawled around deep inside my gut like a tapeworm. What? Right then I decided to remedy the situation. The masticated body parts had been found in the processing plant. We'd heard Weems over the radio instructing orders to converge on that point with a burst of static, when a burst of static interfered with the reception. "Oh, hey, processing plant, that's the first level in the first Doom book." When Grayson's voice came in again, it was loud and clear. Up until that moment, the universe still made some kind of sense to me. All of the military scenarios running through my mind. None prepared me for what happened next. "Jesus Christ, it's not human," shouted Grayson. "Too big, shaped all wrong, humanoid, red eyes." While Grayson providing this fragmentary report, he punctuated his description with bursts from his rifles. Before he could become more coherent, we heard an articulate roar of animal pain from whatever he was shooting. And then he shouted, "I can't put it down!" The next scream we heard was fully human. "Ooh, I wonder if that's a cacao demon." It could be. And if it is, that's going to be super cool if it is. I made it to chapter 3, but I didn't make it that far into chapter 3, and they never actually explain what it is. My whole body went cold. Jesus. Arlene was down there. Keep cool, keep your head. She's a Marine, damn it. One of the Rons looked like he was about to throw. "Okay," I said, "this has gone long enough. We know we're in this together. Give me a gun and let's make some plans. If Arlene were being shot at, goddammit, I intend to shoot back." The honor of the corpse was at stake. Not to mention my best buddy's life. The radio was reduced to background noise for the moment, as Weems the Weasel tried to control the situation. The nervous looks exchanged between the dynamic duo in the mess hall made me wonder about the training that completely destroys initiative. On the brink of death, all the Rons cared about was going by the book. Even if that book printed their own obituaries in flaming letters. One finally generated the initiative to say, "We can't give you a weapon." I tried again. "Staying alive is the objective here. We've all got buddies down there. They don't court-martial the dead. You can't help anyone or defend anything if you're dead. Now, give me a piece." If either of them have shown a glimmer of intelligence or guts, I wouldn't have taken the next step. But they insisted on being idiots. Jesus Christ. As the Godfather said, there are men who go through life just begging to be killed. Is that a true quote? Chapter 2. I think I'm only going to read two chapters today. I have guests over. That came out wrong. I have family friends over. They came over whilst reading. Chapter 2. "Shut up," said the first Ron. "You're going back to detention," said the other. This was a truly pathetic spectacle. Suddenly, I had become the threat in their eyes, simply because I was forcing them to face an unpleasant situation head-on. A number of things happened at once. More screams and gunfire came over the radio, and I thought I heard a woman scream. The nearest Ron unholstered his 10mm pistol and pointed at me. Then the poor jerk gestured the direction he wanted me to walk. He gestured with the hand holding the pistol. With an invitation like that, what could I do? I caught his arm, moved the gun aside, and rabbit punched him in the kidneys. The gun slid across the floor. The other Ron was fumbling with his holster, so I turned and jabbed him in the throat. Not hard enough to kill, but with enough impact to keep him busy trying to breathe. Sorry, Rons. Arlene PFC Sanders means more than the both of you rolled together. I turned back to the first one, who surprised me by regaining to his feet and making a grab with his good arm. Too bad for him, he was off balance and fell towards me, providing another irresistible target. I flat-palmed the back of his head, and he was out like a light. The other Ron was still doubled over, trying to breathe as I collected their weapons. You guys aren't exactly cut out for light drop infantry, I said in as kindly a voice I could muster. Now, I had a problem. They weren't bad guys, but I couldn't trust their goodwill not to come after me. Their fear might be enough to keep them out of my hair, but I couldn't count on that either. I don't know why I spaced it like that. That was weird. Nor did I want to leave them sitting ducks for the hostile forces that were loose in this situation. So, I helped the one who was still conscious to his feet and waited for his glazed eyes to clear a bit. Listen, Ron, we've got a situation here. So, as far as I can tell, we only have these two sidearms between the three of us. This is not good. The lieutenant should have left us with some weapons, don't you think? It was a rhetorical question, so I kept on. I'm leaving one of these guns with you, unloaded. I let him sink back to the floor and slide the clip of ammo across the floor. When you feel well enough to reload, I suggest you barricade the doors, then I can lock... What? When you feel well enough to reload, I suggest you barricade the doors better than I can lock it from the outside and wait for orders. He looked sick as a dog, but nodded, and I left him to his own devices. I pocketed the remaining ammo clips, and I wanted all the edge a few extra rounds could provide until I could find an armory and lay my hands on some real firepower, if the factory had any. As I locked the mess hall doors behind me, I heard the radio sending out useless static crackle. No Weems, no Goforth, no Arlene. Well, last I heard, we were all going to have a party with Grayson's remains as the guest of honor. I didn't like that particular train of thought, so I derailed it. Time to get serious. Then when you want to keep on with that thought if it's time to get serious? After 10 minutes of humping around the compound, I found a land cart. The last one. That was thoughtful of them. Phobos is so small, a diameter of only 22 kilometers, that I could almost hoof it to the factory, particularly in the ultra-low gravity. But I might need to evac the survivors, and in any case, speed counts. Although I'm not claustrophobic, I had lately had my fill of blank walls. The spaceship was the worst. Traveling through a million miles of nothing in a cubicle just so you can reach another cubicle at the end is not my idea of the conquest of space. At least for the one day we spent on Mars, we had a view. The domes were made of super thick, insulated plastic, but were cleverly designed to give the illusion of them being thin as a soap bubble. Soap bubble, I want to see that now. The only trouble was that the view wasn't very impressive. A blank expanse of empty desert broken by an equally barren, dark purple sky. I was only so thrilled with looking at the stars. I liked something bigger up there. Although we could see Phobos from Mars base camp, it was so tiny it almost looked like a bright star trucking across the sky. Not enough moon for a melancholy mood. But now, as I crawled out of the land cart under the back under the black airless sky of Phobos, I enjoyed my first genuine feeling of freedom since I left Earth. Mars loomed in the sky, 3/4 full, larger than any moon, and burning red as the blood of the armies. What? And burning red as the blood of all of the armies ever spilled in uncountable battles across the stupid, drooling face of eternity. The face of a monster. By contrast, the gray, dull surface on Phobos looked like a brittle laundry soap or dried oatmeal. The only variations was Stickney, the huge crater that covered 1/4 of the moon's surface and filled the rest with impact striations. At that moment, I thought Mars might be the last beautiful sight I would ever experience. Ahead lay nothing good. The thought that I might shortly die didn't bother me nearly as much as the dread of letting down my loved ones. Again, there weren't that many back on Earth, but there was one here on Phobos that meant everything to me. Maybe I did love her. I couldn't say. I mean that literally. I couldn't say it. With her hooked up with Wilhelm Dodd, the dirty loser? I don't know. I'm trying to censor the book. But that didn't mean crap. If Arlene were in trouble, then putting my life on the line was the easiest choice I'd ever made. Doing my duty didn't mean I had a death wish. It meant that I would have to stay alive as long as possible to find her and hump her out. Alright, and the rest of Fox too. So with Mars looming gigantic and her sun a shrunken distant ball of flame, quickly setting as I crawled toward the factory, I speed through Phobos daylight, across the Terminator, and into the black night. My stomach started rolling the minute I left the zone and entered the correct gravitational force of Phobos. Not quite 0 G, but close enough for a queasy stomach. I had to watch my speed carefully here. I wasn't sure what the escape velocity from Phobos was. Probably a lot more than a crawling land cart could make. But I sure as hell didn't want to end up in the orbit. The tractor treads didn't work too well out there. I wish I could drive the land cart right inside the refinery, but I had to leave it in the garage on the surface. It sure felt good to get back under even the half-normal gravity in the refinery zone. The silent station lurked below the surface, remaining what was left of Fox Company. As I began the long descent, I promised to keep very, very quiet. Early in a career in the light drop infantry, you learn the absolute essential of lying to yourself. Sure enough, there was noise, and I was the source of it. Even in low G, my boots squeaked slightly. That's so hard to say. Each squeak was magnified in my imagination as if giant rodents nibbled at my heels. What? The rectangle of light beneath me grew in size, as there was no turning back. I thought I'd use the lift, but there was no telling who I'd find inside. The access tube ladder looked like a safer bet. A popular feature of these permanent stations is how there's always light and air, so as long as the small reactor's working. Imagine my disappointment on climbing down the ladder into the hangar when I noticed the first signs that something was seriously wrong. The lights were flickering and I didn't hear the whine of air recirculators. The light was adequate to show an empty corridor stretching in front and behind me. This section didn't seem to show any... Flip the page, come on. Show any signs of recent conflict. And no sooner did a small part of me make the mistake of relaxing than I heard a sharp hissing sound. Before I had time to think, the 10mm was in my hand, and I'd spun around into a defensive crouch. I'm sure I scared the leaky pipe real bad. Times like this, nothing is more welcome than an anticlimax. As I examined the damaged pipe, mindful not to be scalded by the escaping steam, I realized that I might have found something interesting after all. The pipe had been dented by a blunt metal object of some kind, and there was a rust stain on the floor underneath it. There was really only one direction to go. So I went. That direction would also take me towards the hangar control room, where I could hear low, growling noises. Somehow I didn't feel like reholstering my gun. I didn't like the way my palm was sweating either. Taking it nice and easy, I then proceeded down the corridor. Oh, whoops. I had a good long view ahead of me, no room for surprises. I didn't hear the animalistic noises again, but that didn't make me feel any better. Finally, I reached the control room. Right before I pushed the door open, I felt a sudden shiver on the back of my neck and spun around, trying to look down both directions at once. It looked like one of those crazy cartoon drawings of a double take, but there was nothing. At least nothing I could see. No casualties yet. Thank God. The control room was empty, but it had a peculiar odor like sour lemons. After months in barracks, whether in Kafiristan or Mars or in space, you get used to the smell of paint and gallons of disinfectant. But this was nothing like that. I didn't like it one bit. It took only a few minutes to establish that all the equipment was in working order, except for the communication systems, which just smashed into non-existence. Then I had a brainstorm. There might be a gun locker here, something left over from when Phobos was an Air Force outpost. Something a bit heavier than a 10mm pistol would greatly improve the adjustment to my new environment. I found the locker and jimmied open the door fairly quietly. But there were no weapons. Bare covered. Not even... Why? Not even a slingshot. But... so it wouldn't be a total waste. There was a nice selection of last year's flak jackets. Not combat armor, but better than skin in a pressure suit. One looked like it fit me, so I put it on. There seemed nothing else to do but resume my journey along the corridor that must ultimately take me into the rest of the station. I was reaching that dangerous psychological state where you feel that you are the only living person in what had been a battlefield situation. Another word for it is carelessness. Reconnoiter. Reconnoiter. My little voice was telling me to get back with the program. And not a moment too soon, a human figure came striding purposefully in my direction from just around the curve of the corridor. I almost shot first and asked questions at some undetermined future date, reminding myself that Arlene and my buddies here, as well as UAC civilians, were here. I relaxed the old trigger finger, that crucial centimeter, but I kept the gun on the human shape and experienced a sickening moment, not of empathy, but of reluctant understanding of Lieutenant Weems and the monks. When the fear snake snithers around inside your gut, it's pretty damned easy just to start squeezing off at anything that moves. But then I recognized the shape as one Corporal William Gates. "Bill!" I shouted. Really, this dude's name is Corporal William Gates, and his friends call him Bill. So it's Corporal Bill Gates. Good one, guys. I shouted, relief flooding me at contact with a fellow light drop. "The hell's going on here? Are you alright? Where's Arlene? And the rest of Fox?" At no moment there was any doubt that this person approaching was the corporal with who I just played poker, drank, and told nasty jokes. We'd been through enough together, and I didn't even mind that he was one of the monkeys who jumped on my back when I popped Weems. Bill had a very distinctive face, with eyes spaced apart and a scar that ran from his prominent chin into his lower lip. He was walking in an erratic manner. Fatigue, I assumed. Men in combat situations can get very weird, and I'd seen plenty worse than this. Battle fatigue might not even have explained the strange words coming out of his mouth. Stuff that sounded like old horror movie. Bill was staring straight ahead, but he didn't seem to recognize me as he chanted, "The gate. The gate is the key. The key is the gate." I didn't like the spittle on his chin either. As much as I wanted to run over to him, I held back. There was really something wrong here. Nothing I could put my finger on yet, but it was like that smell in the control room. Little hints that something was foobarred on Phobos. What does foobar mean? I'm gonna look it up. "Bill," I tried again. "Bill, it's your cuz. Fly." This time he noticed me. I could tell because he grinned the most evil grin I'd ever seen in my life. Then he raised his rifle and opened fire. Even then, I didn't want to believe what was happening. Fortunately, my bodily reflexes were more realistic, diving behind a pillar that was already preparing to return fire. Yeah, diving behind a pillar, I was already preparing to return fire. I had to try one more time. Stop firing, Bill. It's Fly. God damn it, stop shooting. Alright, that's all I'm going to read for now. Because I feel like I should go out and say hi. You know, just be nice and everything. But anyways, I'll probably play more Doom. See, tomorrow's Monday. I have to babysit, and then I also have schoolwork. So I can try, but I might not be able to tomorrow. So just, like, keep that in mind. But, yeah. That was Doom, Knee Deep in the Dead, chapters 1 and 2. Now we're at 3, so I'll bookmark the page, which is actually right where I got, because it was telling me you should go back to page 45, which is when chapter 3 was. Alright, that's all of Doom. Bye, guys.